We have
Did you hear from Catherine at all?
No, I have not heard anything from her.
Okay. Looks like we lost Jenny. All right, do you guys want to go ahead and get started? Okay. I was texting with Jenny earlier today, and she asked if I would mind sharing today's meeting, and I said, of course not. I don't mind doing that. So if there's something I forget, just remind me and give me a little bit of grace, because I'm not exactly sure how this all works, but I'll do my best. So we're going to call the meeting to order. This is the advisory board for the Albemarle County Department of Social Services. And the first thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes from last month. But one thing I just wanted to note was that our agenda today has October 20th as the date on it, and I think it's the 19th. So if we could just make sure, I don't know if that matters, but if we could just get that updated so that it's actually accurate. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review the minutes that were emailed out to us yesterday. Did anybody have any questions or concerns about those that they wanted to talk about? No? Okay, so then we just need a motion to approve the minutes, and we'll vote on that.
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second. Amy Lawfer.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve and a second, and we will just, I guess, we don't have to do a roll call or anything. So everyone who would like to approve the September minutes, raise your hand or say yes. Did you see that,
okay,
Lisa?
Catherine's here, and I'll say yes.
Hey, Catherine, great to see you.
I'm still having trouble, but that's okay.
Well, I'm glad you called in.
Great.
Thanks for coming. Okay, so we got our September minutes approved, which is awesome. And then the next thing on our agenda is business from the director about the informational items. So Kaki, did you want to highlight any of the informational items before we ask the board if they have any questions?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be really hard to highlight. There's a particularly robust group of activities that were sent to you all for our folks. And I do think it's interesting now that school's back in session that there seems to be this big relief, particularly for the school-based programs, but for all in terms of the routine and structure that it allows for our young people. And so that seemed to show up in a couple of places as well. As you can see, I mean, certainly reflective of our conversation last month, folks are very, very busy. There's a lot going on. We're understaffed and under-resourced in a number of ways. And so, and the increased need in the community, increased caseloads, et cetera, you can see that coming out in the notes as well. So I think that those are the only two things I would identify. And because we have experts with us, I welcome your questions, which I can then immediately ask for help from Wanda and Marianne. Sure, absolutely. Well, let's just go around then and see if anyone from the board had any questions. Karen, did you have any questions or want to bring up anything from the informational items?
No, I read that with heartfelt feelings when I read that, but no, I don't have any questions.
Great, thank you. Jenny, how about you?
No, I don't have questions.
Okay. Amy, how about you?
I think I sent you just, the couple of things I think we should highlight, just the fact that Medicaid is going to be possibly expiring October 31st. I'm also on the board of the Arc of the Piedmont, and they said they were just notified today that it could be extended to January through the federal government. I don't know if you've heard about that, Kaki, but the state would have to give matching funds for that to happen. So I thought we should mention that to the Board of Supervisors, and then just highlight how amazing the foster care group is to finding permanency, kinship permanency. And then, I said one other thing, the hazard pay or hiring more people to help with the family assessments. Seems like that should happen. So those are the only things I think I sent to you, Mary, right? Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. Catherine, how about you?
I don't have any questions, but I do have some comments. I
Sure.
think I would like to really say how pleased we are that the department is functioning with all the problems that they're going through. I was particularly interested to see the report on the Career Center reaching out. And it's just a lot of good stuff going on right now at the time that they're really struggling to keep personnel and keep everything working. So I'd like to commend the department with all the issues that are going on. And we hope we see some help in the future.
Got it. Noted. Thank you so much, Catherine. Yeah, I would love to second that. When I read the informational items, I mean, just so many things pop out to me and catch my attention, but you can tell in every single section of them just the amount of thought and care and passion and energy that is going into every single step of this process. And so I know it may seem informal to have to kind of type out a little blurb about what it is you've been doing for the month, but it's just really great. It's really eye-opening, but it's also heartening to see, and it humanizes this process a lot, at least for me personally. And I appreciate so much the people that are taking all the time to write all this out for us. So please pass that along to them. I had some notes I wanted to ask about. One of them in particular was in the foster care section. So that was section number 2. Letter I talks about November being National Adoption Month, and we're going to try to raise awareness for the urgent need for adoptive families for children and youth in foster care. So how does the department do that? What are we doing to raise awareness for the urgent needs?
So I think part of it is we use social media outlets through the county. We partner with our PR person, and we put out announcements and blurbs that it's National Adoption Month, and we spotlight the month that way. We do things internally as a department as well to spotlight National Adoption Month and highlight adoptions that have happened. Also, there's a larger community event generally, though I'm not sure exactly what's happening this year with COVID. But there's generally larger community events as well, and campaigns. We partner with the city and some other folks, some other adoption agencies in the area to do a larger campaign.
Cool, thank you. I'll
it.
keep my eyes out for that. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was if it's an advertising situation. It kind of sounds like it, yes, with the PR person being involved, but I never knew that November was National Adoption Month. So that's something new that I learned. I wanted to just share about the family preservation section, which was so well written and so just passionate and heartfelt. That was section number 3. This just tugs at my heartstrings. I can feel how much that particular group is going through, and I can empathize because we are feeling it in the schools too. We are understaffed, not to that extent, and we are overworked, but not to that extent. And it is just, when you live with that hanging over you every single day, it's hard to think about anything else and just to go about your daily lives. And so I wanted to acknowledge just that I hear that and how important I think it is that we share this message with our supervisors. I don't know what they can do. I mean, I don't know if the supervisors have the ability to, at this point in the year, with the budget that we have, to offer extra pay, hazard pay. I don't know if it's something where they could offer other benefits, self-care days, mental health days, comp time. I mean, it could be that all of these things are already in place, and that there isn't much that they can do. But I think we still have an obligation to try to make this as understandable to our supervisors, just what a dire situation is going to be if nothing changes. So I hope that we can include at least part of that in our message out to the board. And even if it's not included in the actually like typed message out, I still plan to speak to my supervisor about it. And I know he's aware, but the more times that they can hear it, I think the better it is. So please pass that along to that group of people also. Kaki, you wanted to speak?
Yes, please. I just wanted to share that there likely are some things that the Board of Supervisors could do around this in the next budget cycle. There's a lot of things that are being considered internally. I would say our local leadership, is aware and is trying to figure out ways that they can support us to do some creative problem solving around support for staff, including some of the things that you mentioned that are about money and some of them that are not. Just finding ways that we can provide some specialized support to those folks who have been particularly taxed in the process. And so I think it's a combination of sort of policy, practice, expectations internally, and also potentially for the Board of Supervisors leadership. So I appreciate that, the opportunity to just sort of say that I have been really grateful that internally our leadership has been willing to consider all kinds of strategies to be supportive.
Thank you. The last question or note that I had made on the informational items is about the fuel program, which is in section 4. I noted that it has about a month. It says fuel began 10/12 and ends 11/12. I'm assuming that's applications for the process or the program. Maybe it's not applications, but I guess I'm wondering, like, why does the fuel program end? Because the need doesn't end, and there's people whose life situation could change, and the need appears, but the application is over, and then how do they get help? How does that work?
I would say a large part of that is about budget. And so while the program begins and ends, then there's application processing time. So the checks and the money doesn't actually start coming out until December. And so December, January, February are when the benefit is actually utilized. And then right behind that, you start with the cooling applications. We also have the crisis program, which will help people from cutoffs and emergency situations that you're speaking of. But the application open process is October to November. It's a 1 month, you can get your application in. And then it takes 30 to 45 days to process those. And then the money that people are approved for is sent to their vendors. And then the vendors have time to apply it to the bills. And then it sits there and it's reduced based on the customer's bill amount until the fuel assistance is gone. So it's a process, but the benefit is actually received December, January, and February.
Okay. So then it turns into a cooling assistance program.
Right. There's energy, cooling, fuel. There's been some pandemic money in there this year. Gave everybody an additional boost. There's all,
Is that timeline dictated by the state or dictated by who is giving us this money? They're telling us when the limits are that we can actually give it out? Because I guess I'm just wondering like why we couldn't turn it into a rolling process that goes on all the time.
it is a state program, yes. So no different than SNAP or Medicaid. It's an eligibility benefit program at the state.
Got it. Thank you. Always something new to learn. Okay, so at least for me, that wraps up. Anything else about the informational items that anybody wants to say or ask? Okay, then I think we could move on to the next section, which is business from the director, if you have anything else you wanted to share, and then the presentation.
I don't have anything extra other than what I shared in my notes to you all, which is that I continue to be onboarded to the county, to Virginia Department of Social Services, and so grateful for the staff here at ACDSS for helping me every single day, about 900 times a day. I bump into something I don't know, a process I don't know, and they are gracious as all get out to help me figure this out. So, and we wanted to just finish our conversation with you all about the ways in which we sort of went above and beyond during the pandemic to support families in need. And we did not get a chance to talk about housing special efforts in that way, and or the ARPA funds, which is American Rescue Plan Act. And so you probably have heard about ARPA funds. And we've made some decisions, and actually checks, I think, that are getting cut tomorrow for our first batch of financial assistance. And so with Philip's permission, I'll just roll with the brief ARPA stuff and then turn it over to Philip to talk about both the special ARPA projects that housing has and the ways that housing really responded to community need. I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see it? Excellent. There's no music, so there we go. So just talking about ARPA funding for generalized human services, or broader than social services impact. Our rationale, and I say our, I mean that in a kind of royal way. This is work that Phyllis and Siri and Mary worked on before I arrived, and we continue to carry this ball through lots of sort of both internal and external wrestling about ways to use this money. You may be aware that ARPA money is coming to the county in 2 tranches, and we got the first tranche early summer this year, and we'll get another next year. The money is allowed to be used for a couple of very specific things. You can use the money for a public health response related to COVID. You can use it for a response to community need based on the economic impact of COVID. You can use it for workforce development. So you can use it for what the feds refer to as premium pay. And that comes in lots of different forms. And then you can use it, there's a specific allowance for using it for water, electric, and broadband infrastructure, which is really interesting. And so ARPA has tried to, the authors of ARPA have tried to indicate that you should respond to essentially economic need and then build infrastructure to support the community in general, but specifically around the potential of work from home in a long-term kind of way, which is really interesting. And so a lot of communities are both doing this combination of looking at strategic infrastructure needs and also looking at what the emergent needs are in their community. So we looked at, for this first go round, looking at addressing a significant unmet need in our community due to the pandemic and its economic impact. Requests for emergency financial relief in all of the places where people make those requests are not declining. And so I think that there was some anticipation that starting this summer, we might see some decline in the need, and we have not seen any kind of relaxing of that process. Emergent needs take priority over strategic needs. And so that doesn't mean that it's an or situation, but the first group of money that will go out will go specifically for emergent needs. Supporting projects with existing infrastructure. So I don't know if you'll remember this, but for the idea of shovel-ready projects, if there's already infrastructure in place for the distribution of the financial support, that's preferred over somebody who's developing something new. And then finally, to assume that we don't know everything. And so we wanted to say, we do know a lot of stuff. And so we want to honor what we do know in terms of where the need lives. But we also want to recognize that we should allow organizations to apply directly to the county with ideas about how to use this money as well. And so there's two different methods. One is this method that I'm discussing tonight, which is sending the money out the door to the people we know are in need. And the other is accepting proposals from organizations to prompt our thinking about that. So the first distribution is $800,000 for emergency financial relief to United Way and the Pathways program, which is a collaboration between the city, the county, and United Way. United Way essentially operates as the check writer, which is really an amazing facilitative role for them to play for us, because writing this many checks to community members would be a burden that neither the city nor the county can really take on. And the United Way is also able to move much quicker than either one of those sort of government entities can. And so there is a hotline that folks call, and this will be the second $800,000 distribution that this emergency relief fund has received in this calendar year. The first one is going fast. So we anticipate that we may be facing the end of our funding to this pool and with no relaxing in need, and may need to go back and ask for additional allocation of ARPA funds. But for right now, it's an additional $800,000, which is great. Just about 60% of the calls that the emergency hotline gets for the city and the county are county residents. And the vast amount of the money that goes out is for county residents. We also have distributed $125,000 to create a pool for those requests that don't fall into the Pathways eligibility requirements. An example that came up in the city was somebody who was about to be evicted for essentially not having an inhabitable house, having their house condemned for code violations because the local sewer line from the street to the house was failing, and so there was raw sewage in the front yard. And so a small investment of a similar amount of money at the city was allowed this person to repair their sewer line and stay in their house, which is of course significantly preferable than any other alternative. And so we requested that we have a similar pool for county residents, which is great. So it allows us just a lot more flexibility to say yes to folks to address really practical problems. And then, as you all will be surprised to you, the vast majority of the money is generally used for housing costs. $600,000 was allocated to support the Premier Circle project of TJAC, which is the Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless. It's a collaboration between TJAC, Virginia Supportive Housing, and Piedmont Housing Alliance, and a lesser role for the county in that. And it's a collection of buildings by the Red Carpet Inn out on 29 North. And so those buildings have all been purchased. The first 2 years of construction, the existing habitable housing has already been turned into an emergency shelter / short-term housing. And then they'll start construction on the affordable housing units. And then finally, those units that are currently serving as shelter will be turned into permanent supportive housing units with a preference for people who are identified as chronically homeless, which means homeless on the street for a fair amount of time, plus a documented disability, and that could be a behavioral health issue. I don't know if you all remember when the Crossings was initiated, but it transformed the downtown mall. It essentially reduced the chronic homeless population on the street by a full third. And so this has the potential of being a really significant game changer for the sort of area's homeless population. I will say homelessness is going up during the pandemic. And so the bite of the problem is not going to be as big as it might have been pre-pandemic.
Can I ask you, Khaki, how many people are housed there currently? Do you know?
I don't. I thought they were 85 units. initially.
Okay.
And so, what I don't know is whether there's actually 40 some units and that they're doubled up in those units, or whether they're individual units. I don't know that, because they were double hotel rooms initially, and they got some sort of minor rehab to make them habitable for this short-term emergency shelter stay. But I can certainly find out.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
And then $100,000 to support the Haven, which serves as the region's only available day shelter, which includes showers, breakfast, laundry, mailing address, some bin storage, more importantly, connection to ongoing case management, and access to rapid rehousing funds, which have significantly increased from the federal government and through the Department of Housing and Community Development. And so there's generally more rapid rehousing money available than there are units who will accept it. Certainly that's true in the city and in the urban ring of the county. And then $150,000 to the local food hub for fresh food boxes to address food insecurity, with a particular request to expand into the unserved parts of the county for distribution points. This allows them to extend the fresh food season into the fall and winter, where there's plenty of fresh food available, just not doesn't have the same kind of infrastructure for delivery across the system as the summertime months do. And of course, the distribution networks are already in place. And so all of these programs are really sort of, ready to go. Once they get the money, they'll be starting to deliver the services attached to it nearly instantly, which is really great. So I will say that so being a social worker in the time of the global pandemic is horrible. It's terrible to watch community members in such pain, and to watch the helpers also be exhausted and in such pain. But giving away the ARPA money and the previous CARES money was a small bright spot in that process. So anyway, I feel fortunate that I was able to be part of giving away such large sum of money to those who are helping in the neediest in our community. Are there any questions about that phase of the ARPA?
I'm just curious if any of the 600,000 to the TJAC program, will that also be used to create the housing units? I wasn't clear, sorry.
No, I think the Virginia Supportive Housing is going to get tax credit money to do the preparation. Virginia Supportive Housing is just so experienced and highly skilled in the creation of permanent supportive housing, particularly in the kind of creative layered financing. And they don't want to get stuck. Their preference is to open a building that's debt free, that their only ongoing costs are service costs. And so they maybe Philip can talk about the housing vouchers part of that process. That's part of one of their many layered funding sources. So no, this money is really to operate the shelter component of it. And because housing costs have gone up so much, construction costs have gone up so much, it's possible that we'll end up in a position of having 3 years of this emergency shelter component instead of 2, because it'll be so much harder for them to get started, or they'll have to do more fundraising.
Okay, thank you.
I turn it over to you, Philip.
All right, thank you, Kaki. And Amy, to follow up on your question about the actual housing that will be provided at Mirror Circle, we do anticipate to project-based some vouchers there, which I think we reported on last year. And so we'll have 22 project-based vouchers there as soon as they open. And they are actively hoping that we project-based some additional vouchers there, but that's something that's yet to be determined. But we will have some vouchers that will be available for those units. So I have prepared a presentation as well that I will share with you all. Let's see if that comes through. I cannot see you all, but I hope that you can see my screen. Are we good?
Yes.
All right, great. So when Kaki asked us to present, one thing we were supposed to focus on, or she asked us to focus on, was our kind of reaction to COVID, and how we have maintained resilience throughout this process and continue to provide services. I joined the Office of Housing. I was actually hired by Wanda way back when. It was right at the beginning of COVID. My first interview was actually in person, and then we switched virtual because that's where we all headed. So I have known nothing other than the COVID version of the Office of Housing. But what I do know is that the team and the staff have done an incredible amount of work to not only maintain services, but also to ramp up services. And to continue to meet some unmet needs, especially as our clients who are the most vulnerable in our community are able to remain stably housed. But the goal for what I want to share with you today is how we've, maybe in some ways we're reactive to this situation, but how we're turning it into proaction. So now we're trying to be more proactive about the services that we provide so that we can anticipate and meet a need perhaps before it even comes about. There we go. So what we do, just briefly, we're a HUD-funded public housing agency seated within DSS. So in some ways, we're called a unit of DSS, but at the same time, we're a federally funded public housing agency. The voucher programming that we run within our agency, we have the Housing Choice Voucher Program, as well as Mainstream 5 and Moderate Rehab, which is down in Scottsville School. Housing Choice is where you have the FUP vouchers, which we've talked about some, the Family Unification Program, as well as our tenant-based vouchers. We also have some project-based vouchers that are tossed in there, and some tenant protection vouchers. Mainstream are vouchers that are exclusively for families that have a household member between 18 and 62 who is qualified as disabled. And Moderate Rehab is the Scottsville School property down in Scottsville. On average, we serve about 425 families across all of our programming. So I want to identify a few challenges that we ran into over the last 18 odd months. Housing instability, clearly a challenge in our community as individuals struggle to find housing that is affordable. I'm part of the pilot planning group for the eviction reduction grant that the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission is planning on submitting. And through that discussion, we're constantly reminded of the challenges that individuals face, not only of becoming housed, but also maintaining that safe housing, and the threat of eviction that's looming for individuals who are missing payments of rent due to COVID, or are just in a situation where they may be getting that 2130 and may be experiencing an eviction in coming months. So that instability is just prevalent across our community. And sitting in that room with those community partners, they're sharing with us constantly how unstable the housing market is and rental market is across our community. COVID-19 obviously adds to that mix, just the health complications that we're all aware of, and the challenges that come when living in a multifamily building where you cannot have your four walls, perhaps if you own your own home, your four walls where you can maintain
I'm not sure if I'm paused or if all the rest of you are paused, or if it's Philip.
I think it's
I
Philip
was
went
just thinking the
bye-bye.
same thing.
He's on his way back.
Okay, we'll give him a
Okay.
minute.
I thought
that
it was me too.
was like, everyone's so still. What's happening?
Jackie, if your hand is up, is that a legacy hand or?
Oh my gosh, I'm always getting in trouble for this. Yes. Hi, everybody.
It's dismissal time at school, and it is just chaos. You can't tell, but like right behind my computer, it is just chaos right now. Oh. While we're waiting for him, maybe one of you could answer. I just had a question. I can't remember what's the difference in a tenant-based voucher and a project-based voucher.
One follows the tenant and is transportable, and the other stays in a specific building or location. So the voucher is attached to a specific unit and people go in and out, as opposed to the voucher traveling with the human. And so you can see why that would be a helpful payment strategy for a fixed place like permanent supportive housing project or something like that, as opposed to like a more traditional housing choice voucher where you want to allow the element of choice for most folks who have a voucher. You get to choose whether you live in the country or whether you live in the town, and whether you're 2 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms, whatever. And the project-based voucher is sort of allows for ongoing funding, and it usually pays for 80% of what the actual costs of the units are. And so either, for example, at the crossings, half of the units have a voucher attached to them that's paid for every month by HUD, and then the other half have traditional rents and they match those so that the rents offset some of the. Looks like he's coming back to us.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that.
There you
And I'm back. Sorry, I got kicked off the internet. I guess that's one of staff challenges, I guess, being at home, right? Is randomly getting kicked off the internet. I blame my children who just came home and they're probably eating up all of our bandwidth. All right, let me jump back in here if I may. So I believe here's where I left off. Financial insecurity being one of the large challenges that our client our clients are lower income. A majority of the clients that we serve are beneath 30% AMI, and there is a limit of 50% AMI before clients can even join the program. So certainly puts them in a place where the challenges that come with losing a job during the pandemic really greatly increases their financial insecurity. In addition to increase in housing costs, which are rising in this area, an increase in typical living costs. And then a final challenge that we that identified up top was that a lot of our programming is reactive. One of the things that, I'll be honest, frustrate me about the program that I'm responsible for administering is that there's a waiting list to receive a voucher. It's the way that HUD has designed the program, and while the program has so much positive, that's one of the challenges, is that our clients cannot be provided emergent services. So I'll go into a bit of the solutions now. And while unfortunately, I don't think we can provide emergency vouchers that are readily available on the spot with HUD funding, there are ways that we have been able, and as Kaki mentioned with ARPA, to provide more creative solutions that are perhaps more emergent, to provide some maybe not rental assistance, but provide some other form of programming that can provide some more immediate relief for our clients. So solutions that we've come up with: housing instability, we're seeking housing stability. So obviously the subsidy that we administer is going to be the primary way that our office can provide housing stability for our clients. As I mentioned, we have several of our programs, but you can see here that one of the big things that we did over the last 18 months was something we've called the HCV 90, which was a large ramp up in programming. So we went from administering around 270 up to around 320 housing choice vouchers, and also bumped up some of our mainstream vouchers. The mainstream 15 was a partnership that we took on with TJAC to actually provide vouchers for individuals experiencing homelessness. And you'll see the FUP program on there. So we're trying to bump up our family unification vouchers to be at full utilization of those 25 vouchers. But those three increases in programming, obviously, to our community provides vouchers and voucher support to a subset of our community. Owner engagement has been a way that we've been able to create more stability, at least within our clients and their relationships with their owners or their landlords. We have a new staff person, Carter, who's our rental assistance coordinator. She's 6 months in and is doing a fantastic job engaging with owners in a positive way. ensuring that we provide customer service to them so that they not only rent with our current clients, but that next time around, they're more inclined to stay a part of the program. Carter also sends out rental listings and to our clients to make sure that they know which owners are renting to current voucher program participants, so that our new clients might be able to make those connections with existing owners on the program. And finally, the bonus bucks is another way that we were able to bump up the housing stock that we actually have clients living in, which was an incentive program that enabled new owners that joined the program to receive a slight incentive check. That was paid for by the CARES Act, but enabled us to really, as I said, kind of increase or bump up the amount of stock that our clients can live in. Our solutions to COVID-19 were kind of wide-ranging and a little bit unique in some ways. We did as everyone did, pivoted to virtual as best we could. One of the ways that we made sure clients could continue to gain access to the program and participate in the program was to do our annual and our interim certifications remotely, whereas with annuals, they used to have to come to the office and actually sit down with us. So obviously to keep them safe and adhere to the county's rules about building closure, we were able to do our briefings and, our annual re-exams remotely. We also tried to do a virtual briefing, and that's actually gone quite well. We now have our clients able to participate in that informational briefing that they have to have before joining the program remotely. And we took what was a 3-hour presentation and distilled that down to about a 15-minute presentation that shares all the information, but does so on their own time, opposed to having to show up for a 3-hour briefing at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. So it gives them that flexibility. And that's something we'd like to continue moving forward. The cleaning supply program was also paid for by CARES Act funds and enabled us to provide over 400 cleaning supply bags to clients back in the summer of 2020, when it was incredibly challenging to find masks or gloves or cleaning solution. And we were able to provide these care bags to our clients. And the last thing that we did to really address COVID-19 were some waivers that HUD enabled us to utilize that enabled us to extend voucher search times, recognizing that it's maybe more difficult for a client to find a unit in the middle of the pandemic. And also address how we require clients to submit verification of income. And so kind of had some new rules that we could utilize as we administer the program to ensure that it remains accessible to our clients during COVID-19. Some unique approaches that staff actually recommended to Phyllis back before she left were a few things here. As you can see, we experienced, unfortunately, a decrease in our fair market rents in our community, which was shocking to all of us. So the staff recommended an increase in payment standard. So what that means is, in short, we made sure that even though HUD said that fair market rents were set lower than in previous years, we increased the payment standard, which is based on the fair market rent, increased that payment standard up to 106% to ensure that our clients didn't experience that financial hit of a decrease in fair market standards. So a little technical there, but enabled us to ensure that they didn't experience an increase in the amount of rent that they had to pay. We did see an increase in PUC, which is per unit cost. So that's the total amount of subsidy that we pay. And we were able to draw down with some shortfall funding from HUD to be able to meet that increase in per unit cost. We pay on a sliding scale with our subsidy for clients. So as they perhaps experience a decrease in income, we pay more subsidy. And this shortfall funding enabled us to continue to provide that subsidy at a higher level as that per unit cost went up. And the staff worked tirelessly to process these interims, which are when, as I was saying, a client's income decreases. We were able to quickly respond to that with interims. We did well over 100 interims over the last year, and those interims enabled us to reflect on the client's case so that they could experience that security in ensuring that their rent will be paid on time, even if they are at that point earning zero. So enabling them to remain stably housed. And the last solution that we really dove into, and this is new as in last week, we got notified that county executive signed off, but we have 5 programs that we are anticipating launching, pilot programs with ARPA funding. And then 1 additional staff person that Stacy Pethia would be hiring, that housing counselor down at the bottom. We're looking for a continuation of bonus bucks. And so up through the end of FY22, we anticipate being able to provide incentive payments for owners who join our program. We have a rental application fee program that we're launching that is going to enable our office to be able to pay for initial application fees, which can be anywhere from $30 to $50. Some owners, when they are screening clients, will also charge for a background screening, and they will pass that cost on to the applicant. And so we're going to be able to pay those rental application fees, which will help clients not have to incur those upfront costs. Another program is our security deposit program, which is just what it sounds like. We're going to be able to pay for Housing Choice Voucher program participants' security deposits before they move into their unit. That upfront $1,000, $1,200 that a client may need in addition to the first month's rent is a really, really big challenge. And so it'll enable them to perhaps utilize that security deposit they have tied up from previous rental for other costs, and we'll be able to shoulder the cost of those security deposits. Good Neighbor program is going to be run largely by this housing counselor that Stacy is going to be hiring, but will be a multi-phase program that will eventually work towards providing both owners on the program as well as renters the tools that they need and the mediation that would be helpful for them, and in some ways training and education on how to be positive renters and to engage well with each other. And then the Eviction Prevention Partnership is something that we're launching with the Legal Aid Justice Center. I ask that everybody keep that a little bit quiet at this point because we're still working out some of those details as we launch into that partnership. But that should hopefully provide some legal support up to the end of FY23 for Albemarle County residents who are facing eviction due to loss of income and failure to pay rent due to loss of income. So that'll be an exciting partnership that we'll be looking forward to rolling out in the coming weeks and months. And the housing counselor is going to be providing navigation services for residents in Albemarle County. So a lot of challenges there, a lot of solutions. Finally, I'll leave you all with what we're going to keep around. Virtual briefing is certainly something that we're going to stick with, and staying digital as best we can, shifting some of our procedures over so that clients can continue to access the program remotely. Hoping to continue that bump in vouchers that we did over the last 12, 18 months, hoping to forecast an increase in funding so that we can continue to provide that increase in programming. Really like to see some of these pilot programs that are being launched with ARPA funds turn into full program that are fully funded by the county, but that'll take time to work towards. But I'm hopeful that we can use this opportunity to show proof positive of how these programs can help our clients. And finally, we hope that our mission continues to thrive, which is for us to increase opportunities for all of our county residents, maintain decent, safe, sanitary, accessible, and affordable housing. Special emphasis given to those residents least able to obtain it. So I believe that is all I have. I'm open if anybody has any questions. I know that was probably a lot of very technical information, but all the exciting things that staff did over the last year to maintain resilience and to continue to be proactive as we move forward.
Does anybody have questions? Catherine, were you
is there
saying
a
something?
dollar? Yeah, is there a dollar mark at the top? His financing that I missed part of what Philip was saying. It blanked out and I came back in. How much money total do you have when you're working with these programs? Are there several grants, or how's this money coming in?
Are you asking about the ARPA program specifically, or the voucher program as a whole?
Well, the voucher program.
Sure. So amongst all of our programs, we administer around $3 million in voucher programming per year. So around 2.8 goes towards, well, if I include administrative, we're looking upwards of like 3.5 million in federal funds that come in, but that's split up amongst our moderate rehabilitation program, the mainstream, and the housing choice voucher program.
Okay.
I saw the housing counselor in that section towards the end. So what kind of background would someone who would become a housing counselor like that, what kind of person are you looking for? What's their training or what's their education like to do that?
I may have to defer to Khaki a bit here, in part because that position is going to be hired by Stacy. So it would be a direct report to Stacy. What I can say is that HUD does have housing counselors that participate in their training and become certified as a housing counselor. So the hope would be that we find someone that has that up front, or they'd be able to obtain that in the near future. But in addition to running the Good Neighbor program, the hope is that they can help with home buying and rental navigation. Khaki, I'll let you chime in here with additional JD information and perhaps any other attributes or skills that you want for this potential hire.
It's an interesting sort of question because the housing counselors I know have come from two sort of distinct backgrounds. Some of them have been social workers in settings where they're sort of bump into housing as a tool or a barrier. And so they move into housing because they want to do more practical sort of support service for folks. And then other folks who come from places like insurance or other kinds of like bureaucracy heavy customer service jobs where they're comfortable working in a large bureaucratic system. So anyway, those are the two things. I think we are looking for somebody that has a strong sense of personal advocacy, that they know how they can build relationships and advocate for clients, negotiate relationships on behalf of folks who other people would find difficult. I think Carter is such a great example of somebody whose relationship building skills are so paramount and so good. And so relationships would be the most important thing that we need somebody to maintain and manage. And of course, because they're be attached to us, we want them to be compassionate and smart people at the same time. So we're having a hard time attracting people to our jobs, to all of our jobs. We're just finding our pools to be narrower and smaller, and it's not something unique to ACDSS. I think all employers are finding that to be true now. So I think we'll try to find somebody in the end that we think has the right sort of internal compass that we can train with the process. But it sure would be nice to have that HUD designated housing counselor background because it's not particularly easy to obtain, and it makes a difference to have it for HUD. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions about that housing presentation? I guess in closing, Philip, could you tell us what could we as a board do to best help you? What could we advocate for, or what are your biggest needs that you think that the Board of Supervisors needs to know about? Or if you want to get back to us next meeting, that's fine.
That's a tough question. I think I'd like some time to think that through. I would appreciate that, and I'd be glad to report back with some targeted information as to where we are. All I can say is we're going through an immense amount of change and growth right now within the housing, the Office of Housing. The addition of Stacy and the passing of the housing policy, those were huge advancements for our office as we continue to grow and continue to stabilize where we are right now. So I'd like to think it through and maybe reach back out as soon as I've had time to think that over and talk that through with Khaki as well.
Sure, that's definitely fair. I appreciate that. So thank you so much for that presentation. I think it was really, really informative. And I appreciate the way you break things down to just make it easily understandable, because a lot of this, like, even though it sounds familiar or we may have heard about it in the past, it's always good to have it explained again in a really thorough way. So I appreciate that so much. We are going to move on to the last section of the agenda. I don't know if there was anybody who needed to go. I know, Karen, that you had said that you had something going on soon. So I'm glad that you could make the meeting. Thank you so much for coming. And I guess, Philip, don't feel obligated to stay for our last part of the discussion, unless Kaki wants you to, in which case you probably should.
I'm gonna go ahead and take off. Thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have business from the board on the agenda. Is there anybody on the board who had things that you wanted to share with us?
Well, I do have, it's time for me to be reappointed or whatever to the board. And even though I enjoy it, I don't think I'm going to continue, but I'm always a community person. So whoever represents the Samuel Miller District, I will always be in touch with, along with my board of supervisors.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. When is your term actually ending?
I'm not sure. I got an email that said soon, but I know, Liz is not returning, and Jim Andrews is not. He's running unopposed, so I'm sure that's who my supervisor will be.
Okay, Lisa, were you gonna hop in and say
I was
something?
just gonna say the end of December.
Okay. End of December. Got it.
Okay.
I also have, my term isn't ending, but I served for like 2.5 or 3 years when the person before me needed to step down. And so Ann Malik asked me to serve, and so I served that term, and then I'm like halfway through this term in December. But I have asked her to see if there's someone else that might be interested, but I'm going to keep serving until she finds someone. But I have to keep reminding her to keep looking, because it takes a little while to find someone. We've been talking about it for 6 months actually, but I will keep showing up until we find the right person. So
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know. I
Yeah.
got an email saying my term was coming to an end. I didn't know when. I can't remember when I started. I think it was about 3 years ago, but and I asked Ned Galloway if I could continue, because I do enjoy being on the board and serving in that way, and he was happy to appoint me again. So I completed the application so that I could continue on the board, but I don't know when that actually happens, or if it's just a given. I don't know. I'm sure he'll let me know.
Yeah.
I did talk to, I had a meeting with Carter Walker and Philip from the housing office to talk about the idea from the last meeting about sending thank you notes, personalized, like handwritten thank you notes to the property owners who have joined who are participating in our housing voucher program. And I think I initially got the idea through the bonus bucks when we were talking about how that had drawn in new people, in that we were hoping it would convince landlords or owners to continue renting to people that in our community who really need it. And so I thought kind of a personalized connection and making them feel appreciated would be a good way to go about that. So we have a document that we all have access to, the three of us, and have been brainstorming some things, how we would want it to be worded, the specific things that we're trying to get across to them and how we want to say it. And then whenever we have our next person join, our next property owner join for the first time, then that will be when we send out the first thank you note. So it hasn't happened yet, but that is underway. So I better practice my handwriting. And I just wanted to give you guys an update on that. And that was the only business that I had to share. So what we have left is to figure out our message out. Kaki, I had an email from Amy with the things she wanted to highlight, and I will forward it to you. It was 3 or 4 things. Do any of the other board members want to say if you have things from today's presentation you think should be included? And I'll email Karen and ask her also.
Yeah, I think the things that you guys mentioned at the beginning are important. And I do think, as we said before, you know, we have the opportunity to speak with our supervisors and talk about the things that we really want to lift up out of that, like the hazard pay or other type of solutions that could offer some relief. So I think highlighting that, and then also each of us can speak with them to draw more attention to that, which I know they're already aware, but it's a big issue.
Yeah. Thank you. So Taki, if you don't mind kind of doing what you did last time, working your magic with you tell us what you want us to say and we will say it.
Thank you. I'm happy to do that. And I promise I will get them out faster than I did after the first meeting. That's
okay. The information doesn't expire unless there's something, you know, time sensitive, but I think it's all still certainly valid, and they're happy to get it from us whenever they get it. Lisa, I forgot to tell you, I meant to tell you at the beginning of the meeting when we were approving the minutes, your minutes are awesome. I really appreciate like how detailed they are, how much stuff you fit into them. You catch pretty much everything everybody says. You don't have to put this in the minutes, but I just wanted to tell you that like after seeing so many of our community boards that have terrible minutes, I just really appreciate how well you do our minutes. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll agree with that.
Well, I think that's it. Is there anything we forgot to do, y'all?
Nope.
Okay, well then look at us. We are finished early. We can adjourn and we'll see you all next month.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye. Thanks, Mary.
Bye.
Bye.